Humans were the newcomers to the galactic stage, a curiosity at best and a joke at worst. The Galactic Council, an alliance of ancient, comfortable civilizations, classified Earth as a Category 5 death world, a planet so hostile it shouldn't have produced intelligent life. But humans had survived, thrived even, on a world where nature constantly tried to kill them. The Council dismissed this as exaggeration, an amusing narrative humans clung to for relevance. After all, no species from such chaos could pose a real threat. The Chirac Dominion didn't find it amusing, they found it insulting. A predatory, warlike species, the Chirac had dominated weaker planets for centuries. They believed strength meant control, and humanity, with its patchwork colonies and naive optimism, was just another target. The Council warned against it, if only to maintain diplomatic order, but did nothing to intervene. The Chirac sent their fleet to Vega Prime, humanity's newest colony. The Dominion commander, Cossack Tal, broadcast his message across the colony's comms. His serrated mandibles clicked with amusement. Humans of Vega Prime, submit. Surrender your resources, and we may spare your lives. Resist, and we will show you what true Deathworlders are. Silence followed. The Chirac soldiers chuckled, convinced the colony was paralyzed by fear. They expected panicked pleas or frantic attempts to evacuate. Instead, the comm crackled to life. Governor Elias Kane's voice was steady. "You're making a mistake." Tal sneered. "The only mistake here is your defiance. You can't fight us. You don't have the strength." "Strength?" Kane replied. "You misunderstand us. We don't fight because we're strong. We fight because we don't have a choice. Earth taught us that." The transmission cut off. The Chirac fleet surged forward, confident of an easy victory. Their plasma cannons shredded Vega Prime's orbital defenses within minutes. The colony's surface defenses barely returned fire. The Chirac saw no coordinated defense, no strategic countermeasures. To them, it confirmed humanity's weakness. Tal ordered ground forces to deploy. Chirac dropships pierced the planet's thin atmosphere, landing near the colony's central hub. Soldiers disembarked, weapons raised, mandibles clicking in anticipation. The streets were deserted, buildings dark. It looked like an abandoned outpost, not a bustling colony. "Where are they?" Tal muttered. His answer came seconds later. The ground trembled. Explosions erupted beneath the landing zones as concealed thermobaric mines detonated. Dropships crumpled like paper. Plasma turrets rose from hidden emplacements and fired into the confusion. The Chirac assault dissolved into chaos. From a nearby rooftop, Captain Reyes of the Colonial Defense Force watched through a visor feed. His voice was cold as he transmitted to the enemy command frequency. "You came here looking for prey. Welcome to a Deathworlder colony." The Chirac forces scrambled for cover, their disciplined ranks collapsing into disorganized clusters. The ground, once a seemingly harmless landing zone, had become a maze of fire and shrapnel. Smoke filled the air, thick and acrid, as automated turrets tracked targets with mechanical precision. Plasma rounds cut through the invading troops, striking weak points in their armor. Panic spread like wildfire. Commander Tal watched the carnage from his command vehicle, disbelief tightening his chest. This wasn't a desperate last stand, it was a meticulously laid trap. The colony hadn't been defenseless, it had been prepared. "Pull back the ground forces," Tal barked, his mandibles grinding. "Regroup and establish a defensive line." The order went out, but the damage was already done. Chirac units tried to retreat, only to trigger more hidden explosives. Their elite soldiers, seasoned conquerors of weaker worlds, were dying by the hundreds to an enemy they'd dismissed as soft. Tal turned his attention to the orbiting fleet. "Command, initiate aerial bombardment. Level the colony." There was no response. He repeated the command, his voice sharp with desperation. Silence. He checked the comm channels. Every frequency was dead. The humans had jammed their communications. The Chirac were deaf, blind, and isolated. Tal's eyes darted to the tactical display. The fleet indicators flickered and vanished, one by one. Human stealth corvettes, smaller and less advanced than Chirac cruisers, had exploited the Dominion's predictable formations. Targeting engines and communication arrays with surgical precision, they crippled the fleet without a single wasted shot. A low rumble overhead drew Tal's gaze skyward. Through the smoke, he saw descending figures, human soldiers in reinforced exosuits, their visors glowing red in the gloom. They landed with practiced efficiency, weapons raised. No war cries, no grand declarations. Just cold, methodical action. The Chirac, cornered and disoriented, fired wildly. The humans responded with precision. Every shot counted. Plasma bolts struck weapons, limbs, and unprotected joints. Chirac soldiers crumpled to the ground, their biological advantages nullified by tactics perfected on a planet where predators stalked from shadows. Tal's bodyguards shifted into position, forming a defensive perimeter. The commander clutched his sidearm and growled, "These primitives dare to ambush us? We're the apex predators here." A voice crackled through his personal comm, an open channel. "Predators," came a calm, male voice. "You've never faced real predators before." Tal turned toward the sound. A human soldier stood a few meters away, rifle aimed with unsettling steadiness. The man's armor bore the insignia of Earth's colonial defense force. "Captain Reyes." "You should have done your homework," Reyes said. "Deathworlders don't break easy," Tal roared, firing his sidearm. Reyes didn't flinch. His rifle barked once. The Chirac commander collapsed, clutching a shattered knee. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Reyes stepping forward, voice cold and unyielding. "Never poke a Deathworlder." Word of the Vega Prime massacre spread across the galaxy within hours. The Chirac Dominion, once feared for its brutality, had been decimated by a species they had mocked. Fleet analysts reviewed the footage in disbelief. Tactical experts rewatched, frame by frame, how human forces had anticipated every move, manipulated the battlefield, and turned the invaders' strength into a liability. The council chambers, usually a place of detached debates and cautious diplomacy, were filled with hushed conversations. Humans were no longer an anomaly. They were a threat. The Chirac commander, Cossack Tal, was captured and brought to an underground interrogation center on Vega Prime. His exoskeleton was cracked, his pride shattered. He sneered when Captain Reyes entered, though the gesture was more habit than defiance. "You think this changes anything?" Tal spat. "You got lucky. We underestimated you." Reyes tilted his head slightly. "Yeah, you did," he said evenly. "But luck didn't win this fight. Preparation did. You stepped onto a Deathworld colony thinking it'd be easy. You forgot what Deathworld means." Tal's mandibles twitched. "You're parasites. Weak. Soft. You build machines to survive, while we evolved to dominate." Reyes leaned closer. "Machines don't help against a hurricane or a wildfire. We survived those long before we had technology. You call yourselves predators, but you've lived too long without challenge. You're domesticated." Tal lunged forward, straining against his restraints. Reyes didn't react. He'd seen that same look in cornered animals back on Earth. "You invaded our colony," Reyes continued. "Killed civilians. And for what? Resources you didn't need. Power you already had. You thought we were easy prey. But Deathworlders, we don't break. We adapt. And we hit back harder." Across the galaxy, the broadcast of the failed invasion played on public feeds. The Chirac fleet, reduced to smoldering wreckage. Their soldiers, fleeing in terror. Their commander, captured and humiliated. Other species watched in stunned silence. The Galactic Council had once scoffed at Earth's survival stories. Now, those tales didn't seem like myths. On the commerce networks, shipping lanes around human colonies suddenly became quieter. Pirate activity plummeted as opportunistic raiders reconsidered their choices. The mercenary groups that once mocked Earth's colonies for their stubborn independence quietly removed human settlements from their target lists. The council convened in emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species argued about containment, sanctions, and potential alliances. Ambassador Valisk of the Sereth Collective, who had once dismissed humanity as biological accidents, adjusted his translation device with trembling fingers. They set a trap, Valisk said to his peers. They let the Chirac believe they were winning. And then they crushed them. Efficiently. Mercilessly. Ambassador Kirik of the Zandari Accord clicked his mandibles. The humans only defended their territory. They didn't invade. They warned us for years that Deathworlders aren't easily subdued. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. In a private council feed, one anonymous message circulated repeatedly. Don't provoke Earth. The Galactic Council's chamber was silent as Captain Reyes stood before them. The feed from Vega Prime had already been dissected, analyzed, and debated endlessly. Now, the council members wanted answers. He stood without ceremony, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. His presence was a stark contrast to the polished, sterile environment around him, a soldier in a room full of politicians who'd never faced a real threat. Councillor Valisk was the first to speak. Captain Reyes, the council demands an explanation for the excessive force used on Vega Prime. Reyes raised an eyebrow. Excessive? He let the word hang. A hostile fleet invaded a civilian colony. We defended ourselves. Efficiently. You broadcast the footage across public channels, Valisk pressed. That level of psychological intimidation is unprecedented. We didn't broadcast it, Reyes said. The Chirac did when they declared their invasion. We just let everyone see how it ended. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The council had spent centuries maintaining the illusion of stability. War, when it happened, was sanitized, distant. The Vega Prime footage shattered that illusion. It reminded the galaxy that survival sometimes meant getting your hands bloody. Your response has destabilized the region, Councillor Kirik interjected. The Chirac Dominion has sued for peace. Neighboring systems are rethinking their trade routes. Entire sectors are nervous. Reyes nodded slightly. Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before attacking us. Councillor Valisk's voice wavered. Is that a threat, Captain? Reyes's eyes locked on the councillor. It's a fact. We didn't come here to conquer. We joined the galactic community hoping to cooperate, to share what we've learned about survival. But survival on a death world isn't polite or clean. It's brutal. Earth taught us that long before we ever left the atmosphere. The chamber shifted uncomfortably. These were species who'd mastered their environments eons ago, who saw survival as an outdated instinct. Humans lived with it daily. We warned you, Reyes continued. We told you Earth is a death world. We told you our colonies would reflect that. You thought we were exaggerating. The Chirac thought we were easy prey. He leaned slightly forward. Now you know better. The broadcast feed was being monitored across hundreds of systems. On colony worlds where humanity had been dismissed as a minor player, settlers watched with quiet pride. In the war rooms of military powers, analysts scribbled notes and recalculated their strategies. On pirate ships and mercenary hubs, hushed conversations turned to safer targets, ones without Deathworlders. Reyes straightened and gave the council a thin, humorless smile. We're not looking for war. We just want to be left alone. But if anyone decides to come after us again. His voice dropped to a level that made even the seasoned diplomats tense. We'll show them why Earth is called a death world. Without waiting for a response, Reyes cut the connection. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. Never poke a Deathworlder.